Welcome to the beautiful side of grief, your go-to podcast if you're wanting to hear from people who have moved through heart-wrenching loss or those who are at the coalface supporting this process. It's diverse, heartwarming, though most of all it's positive and filled with go-tos that you can use yourself. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and I'm a health professional turned energy healing practitioner after I lost my only child and daughter, Tara, in a car accident in 2017. Energy healing has helped me turn my own heartbreaking loss into a positive, and I want to use my own unique experience to help you navigate your own journey with loss. You will hear from grief coaches, mediums, authors, first-hand loss accounts, plus many more. I'll pop the links to any free resources in the episode notes, along with my website address if you would like to know more about the energy work I do. Don't forget to subscribe or like so you can keep informed of each weekly episode. So now, sit back and relax as we navigate the beautiful sides of grief. In this episode, you'll be hearing from Dan and Nancy Loeffler, who are the founders of Being with Grief. As parents who lost their 17-year-old daughter, Leah, in a car accident in November of 2000, they fully understand the territory of grief. Their daughter's death provided a doorway to their transformation that they never expected. They now help others to navigate their own grief. Dan is an advanced grief recovery specialist, and Nancy works intuitively using mindfulness practices as well as other strategies that assisted her on her journey. She is also the author of The Alchemy of Grief, Your Journey to Wholeness, an account of her grief journey, as well as wisdom she discovered along the way. Their passion is changing the conversation around grief and helping their clients find meaning, purpose, and joy again so that they can fully participate in their lives. I want to thank you, our listeners, for being with us on today's episode. I love being with you and hearing any feedback you had, good or not so good. So feel free to share that. But now let me welcome my two wonderful guests, Dan and Nancy. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you both today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, Ellen, thank you.
You're welcome. We share something in common, and that's the loss of a daughter around a similar age. And I just want to understand from you both what your life was like prior to the loss of your beautiful Leah and how that was ticking along, and then how you each found out about her actual accident.
Yeah, well, before Leah died, she was a typical 17-year-old girl. We had moments of frustration, and we were just beginning to see the light. I was just beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel of that mother-daughter angst. Every so often she would say, "Mom, let's talk," or "Mom, can we have dinner together tonight?" And that was just so touched my heart because she was very independent and we didn't always have that kind of relationship. She was also beginning to look at colleges. She was very interested in fashion design and was looking at some of those types of colleges. She was getting ready to take her SAT test the day after her accident.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What about for you, Dan?
Well, we're both working and our lives were full. We also have a son who is 3 years older than Leah. His name is Peter, and he's just blessed us with our first grandchild.
Oh, congratulations.
So once again, our lives are full. But back at the time when Leah was with us, the day-to-day activities kept us focused on, and we both worked in construction, managing construction projects. And my life got turned upside down after our daughter's death. And we struggled. I struggled very much, not having the tools that I needed. And I think as a man, I had a distinct reluctance to be vulnerable. And that impacted how I was able to grieve and how I was able to heal ultimately.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's so important because typically in the construction industry, there is that, sort of macho image that comes with that. And so you are less likely to show your vulnerable side and even know that it exists, really, I guess. And it takes something like this sometimes to really bring that to the fore and recognize how important that is, that everybody should be able to share their vulnerability. And, Jan, I'm especially happy that you're joining us today because I feel that there are so many men out there who need to be hearing from other men about their grief and their grief journey and how it's okay to share and it's okay to be vulnerable in that. So, I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful for you being vulnerable with me today.
That kind of ties into that is that I recently saw a statistic that said that 5 to 10% of who have experienced a life-defining grief seek support and guidance and through this time. And that leaves 90% of us out there struggling on our own, trying to be brave and be strong and shoulder the burden. And
what do you suppose that is? Is it just the stereotypes? Do you suppose that we've been brought up with that you need to be the strong ones and that you need to be taking care of everything?
Yeah, my first impulse was I'm going to take all of these feelings and emotions that I have surrounding her death and put it in a box and put that box up on the shelf and not deal with it. That didn't work. And it wasn't until I was brave enough to open up that box and to do the work that I needed to do.
Can I ask you how long it took you to do that? To be brave enough?
It probably took me 2 years of bottling all of these feelings and emotions and before that those feelings became or needed my attention. And because my life, I was distracted at work. I wasn't able to concentrate, focus. And we talk about how we didn't have the ability to grieve together initially.
So I was just going to ask that, Nancy, how did you find that time? Like 2 years is an awful long time, to have a partner who wants to just put everything in a box. And you're probably the opposite, wanting to talk about it, wanting to share it. Were you that type of person? How did you cope with all of that?
I was that type of person. However, I also recognized that we each had to do our own journey initially. So we did talk about Leah. We still communicated about other things. And we were still both really in those early initial stages of grief. However, I dove in a lot sooner. I dove in a month or so after Leah died because 2 weeks after she died, I received this message that said, losing Leah is too high a price to not live the life that I was meant.
Wow.
I think that saved my life because my grief journey became about excavating the life I was meant. So I turned to a practice that was already part of my life at the time with a trusted facilitator and began processing my grief with it's called samyama, and it's a way of bringing our feelings into our hearts and allowing the alchemy of our heart, hence the name of my book, to begin to shift those feelings. And it also separates the feeling from the story that we have in our heads, all the what ifs and the if only. If only I had been a better lover, I could have kept her safe. And all of those are the things that I would slice and dice everything that happened and try to have it be a different outcome. And that wasn't going to happen. So when I saw how powerful this practice was at helping me to process my grief and really begin to shift the feelings. And every time I did, I would receive blessings and grace. They seemed to come out of nowhere, but I began to connect the dots. Every time I was able to bring the pain and devastation into my heart and allow my heart to hold it, I would receive blessing and grace. And when I saw how powerful that was, I decided to become certified as a samyama practitioner so that I could I wasn't ready to do it yet, but I was called to become a practitioner in 2009. I didn't start helping people until 2014. And during that apprenticeship time, I was offering some yama as a resource for daily living because it works for everything. It's not,
Yes.
it helps us to deal with all of our feelings. And about, 75% of my clients were great clients. So I was already prepared for the eventuality that I would be assisting people in this way.
Isn't that strange how that comes about? Because for me in my own journey, my daughter guided me to energy healing, the emotion code and the body code, which is releasing all those emotions that, we trap within our bodies, whether that's from, past trauma or from the experience of grief. And that was just transformational for me. That changed my life forever. And it's almost like out of the worst possible event happening, there are these amazing things that you then become aware of and conscious of, and that have the ability to completely transform your life. So, I get that. So, what are your thoughts on losing a child? Because many people say that losing a child is a different kind of grief to any other form of grief. What are your thoughts on that?
It was devastating. It definitely changed our lives. It changed my perspective on life. It changed the way that I live my life. Things became more urgent. Because I received that message, I wasn't, so many people stay stuck. That allowed me to not stay stuck in that place that wasn't going to serve me. I'm so grateful for that because, as said, we do find blessings and grace and we do find beauty in our journey, even though it's counterintuitive sometimes.
Yes.
Especially when the way I explain it is that my head can't figure it out and my head still wants it to be here. And my heart can understand it all. So it's being willing to be in the unknown and in the mystery.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it doesn't matter how much time passes, you still have that feeling. It doesn't go away. So it's not about getting over your grief.
No.
It's about learning to have that as part of your life, where it fits into your life going forward. And sometimes you have to shake things up a little bit to get it to fit in nicely and to be able to carry on. So, Dan, how was it for your son Peter losing his sister? Do you remember how it was for him?
Well, as I said, we each had to deal with our own work, our own grief at the time. And so he was actually off at college. He was there for the accident and all of that ensuing part of the story that just filled our world with, the way I like to define it is a life-defining tragedy. And when you asked about losing a child, we each experience a number of grief periods throughout our lives. And whether it's loss of a job, loss of a relationship, it could be a divorce, it could be, in our case, the loss of a child. And if we don't deal with the emotions, because we really don't have the tools that we need to open up that box and dig in and work through things that are important to us.
Yeah, and I think, like you've mentioned, Nancy, I was reading some of your website. You mentioned about, healing many of your childhood wounds,
Yes.
as a result of this. And that's too what my journey has been. And so in a roundabout way, I think, wow, it took this to get to that point, I had been aware and conscious and trying to do it, but perhaps not on the scale that it needed. So was that like what it was for you?
Yeah, I've been aware of my childhood wounds. I have been working at healing them. Once this completely broke open my heart and shattered the fabric of my life. So everything was up for grabs. So when I began putting it back together, there were pieces that didn't fit. And one of the things is that when I wrote the book, and the woman who was helping me put it together said, while we're editing it, you can decide where you want to speak about it and how you want to market it. Thinking, I don't speak in front of people. That's not good. Well, first of all, to back that up further, I didn't think I was going to write a book because I'm not an author. And so reclaiming my voice, I was a severe stutterer as a child. So I reclaimed my voice. And because I'm being called to share my story in the way that I'm doing it. And so, yeah, healing those childhood wounds was a huge gift. It is a huge gift. It continues to, I continue to shed them as they come up, and as I continue to step fully into where I'm being called, because I thought that when I started helping clients that I had found the life I was meant to live, and then I was called to write a book, and then I was called to speak about my book, and now I'm doing podcasts. So I realized that the life I meant to live continues to evolve.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've noticed that, by you addressing those concerns of your early childhood and the wounds that you had there have had a profound effect on both your husband and son as they see you evolve into a different person who's probably more secure, more confident. Would that be fair to say? Yeah.
Yes. And I also think you asked about Peter. My own reflection on that, we each, all three of us, met our grief journey in our own way, and it gave us the opportunity to do our inner work.
Yes.
Dan chose to do his inner work when he couldn't keep the grief in the box on the shelf in the closet with the lock on it. And Peter, he wasn't very forthcoming about how he was handling it, and he kept in touch with us, letting us know he was okay. And I know he began doing his inner work a lot earlier than either one of us did. So it's that was one of the things that it did for all of us, and we're very close now.
Fantastic. That's a great outcome, from unfortunate circumstances. But you also made the comment about grief illuminating all the areas of your marriage that needed attention, Nancy. And I'd love to touch on that because I know that grief has the power to either bring you tighter and stronger together, or it can blow you completely apart.
Well, there was a time when we didn't know if we were going to be long completely apart, or if we were going to stay together. And it was only after each of us had reached a certain point in our grief journey that we said, okay, now what do we do here about all these things that need work that we knew about, but we were busy raising a family. And so it actually took 2 years to deconstruct, take a look at all the areas of our marriage that needed work. And we made a conscious and intentional decision to work at it, to see if it could be. We still didn't know when it started. And at the end of that time, we had a few rituals. We released what we no longer needed. We recommitted to each other sunrise on Cozumel 2 years later. And it was like, we didn't even plan it. It was we were on vacation, and it just sort of evolved. So and we recommitted as full partners and full. It's beautiful. So we each give each other what each other needs, and you share anything else you want to. But it's from that point on, we had a completely different. We still have really good roots, and we were able to live the life that we had always envisioned, I think.
I'd like to go back and, talk about how men approach this, because Nancy said something that reminded me, when you fall down as a kid, I was told, well, just get up and walk it off. And going back to the be strong, shoulder your burden, time heals all wounds. And it's not the time that goes by. It's what you do with the time. And that's where we were fortunate. We took that time. And for the first year, we didn't touch her. We made the understanding that we weren't going to change anything, to let it sink in. The things that we did change or tried to change were the things that happened around the milestones, the birthdays, Christmas, all of the things that, well, there was no normal, and it all had to change. And so we were selective in how we approached the things that needed to change. And that included the things that were about our marriage.
Are you able to elaborate on like some of those things that needed to change when you talk about the milestones?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest one is Christmas. Christmas. Leah died in November. So we had Thanksgiving, the anniversary of death, Thanksgiving and Christmas in that end of the year. And the first year we had family with us and we were still in shock. So we had the friends over to the house. We did put up a Christmas tree and then helped us decorate it. And we were in shock. The second year we tried to do things the way that we always did. Peter was in college. He came home. We waited to put up the Christmas tree and we all were just sitting there. We just didn't feel like doing it. He was home for a week. And he stayed in his room. We didn't go out.
The Christmas music that we loved.
Didn't play that.
Couldn't play it.
It was just so, it was such a painful week. And after that, we started traveling at Christmas time.
Yeah.
So while we still missed her, we didn't change that. We changed the locations so that we didn't expect to see her come bounding around the corner, because we were trying to make things the way that they always were. So we took vacations to places like Cozumel, and so we started going there. One year we went back to Chicago, which is where we're from, and then we had family coming to see us in our hotel. So that was one thing that we did. We did not put up a Christmas tree from that second year until about, 2 years ago. It just wasn't in the cards. And each year is different. And so it's important to ask ourselves, it was important to ask ourselves each year, what do we want to do? On Leah's birthday, sometimes we would eat some of her favorite foods. Sometimes we would just go to a place that's important to us, a lake that soothes us and sit in meditation for a while. It depends. Each year is different. And it's funny, her birthday is April 28th, 4/28. And we moved to St. Paul about 6 months ago because our granddaughter is here. We moved to be closer to her. We bought a condo right downtown and we looked out the window and the address on the building right down the street, half a block away, is 428. It's just those things.
It's a synchronicity, isn't it?
You know?
Yeah. Things that you can't explain that just come out of nowhere. I have that a lot. And, because it was just myself and my daughter for 17 and a half years, I find that for me, I tend to go and have alone time because I can't really explain, even for those who are closest to us. But, it's difficult to explain the relationship that Tal and I had on a daily basis and what was important to us. And you can share it, and I think people try to understand, but, for me, sometimes my honoring her is, especially on the day that it happened, is I just take myself away and I just go and remember her, remember all the good things about her, those really special memories, because those are the ones that lift me up again, that give me heart and strength to keep carrying on, because you can't go back. You can't change it, no matter how much you wish to. So, I understand your need for, just having a different look to what were perhaps traditional things that you used to do on those important dates. So thanks for sharing that. So let's now talk about the wonderful work that you're both doing. I can feel it. I can feel that you two are on a mission to help other people in their grief journey. And that's such an impossible thing because we see and hear of so many people getting stuck. So what does that look like for each of you?
For me, it's primarily one-on-one work, and it's a transformational journey, just like mine was. So I always start out by teaching the practice of samyama, and then everything comes from there. We always talk about gratitude and self-care. What does self-care look like for you when you're in grief? It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing on an anniversary date. So what does it really look like? And I've started calling it self-love because it's learning how to love ourselves enough to give ourselves what we need so that we can be the best people that we are. So gratitude, self-love, creativity, because creativity connected me back to the essence of who I've always been. And it helped me in that journey. So creativity is a great way to connect back to that and help to express those feelings, whether it's in art or collaging or movement. We also incorporate grief movement. So I have a lot of strategies like that helped me in my own grief journey. And I've created a body of work, that's unique to everybody that works with me. Even though on the website that it looks like those specific packages, nobody's body of work is the same because everybody's journey is different. There just has to be some way to try to quantify to describe it. So that's basically what my work looks like.
That's wonderful. Just before we head to you, Dan, and hear from you, I just want to touch on that thing of self-love, because that is what I feel so many people are out of touch with, is actually loving themselves. And that self-love can be such a huge breakthrough and create a different life for them in so many different areas. Is that what you find? When you talk about self-love, do you find that people struggle with that aspect?
People struggle with that. I struggle with it. That was one of the wars that I needed to heal for myself, is learning to value myself and the person that I am, person that I always have been. And it's just such an amazing feeling when someone gets it and they say, okay, so that's what you're talking about. I need to look at the relationship with myself before I can change something with someone else. But when that light bulb goes on, it's just such a great moment for both of us.
Yeah, that certainly is. Now, Dan, you're an advanced grief specialist, is that correct? Recovery specialist. So share with us what that means, what that looks like, and how it works for people.
Well, again, part of my journey was, how was I going to, once I opened that box, what was I going to do with it? And my initial work was one-on-one with a therapist who helped me get through and recognize and become comfortable with talking about what was inside that I had held on to and that was beginning to dismantle my life. The permission that I gave myself at that point was that it's okay to talk about these things. But you have to do it in a safe environment. And along this time, I found the grief recovery method, which appealed to me as an architect and an engineer, because it lays out a program of short, defined steps that appeal to me from the logical part of my brain. And those graphs and charts gave me context. And I learned that all of those occurrences of grief that happen, the failures that occur, the things that I wish had been different, better, I could look at over the course of my life, make a timeline, chart them out. And of course, my life defining one was Leah's death. So that was the one I chose to work on first. And it's a really simple way of looking at a very complex set of things, and then allowed me to focus on feelings of what I would have liked to have said to her, what I would have apologized for, what I would have forgiven her for, and all of the I love yous that I tell her all the time. But so, and primarily I work with groups, but also do individual work. And with the beauty of all of the virtual stuff that's going on now, we work with people, and that's a nice added feature.
I know that certainly sort of helped me in my journey, being able to go virtual and do different things, and even having these podcasts. I mean, like so many of my guests are from different countries other than New Zealand. I'm still trying to rustle up a few more Kiwis to get on the bandwagon and share with me. But we're sort of like, just get stuck in, just do what's needed, and we don't often share, so I can understand what you were talking to about a man, and I think Kiwis as a rule just, pick themselves up, dust themselves off and carry on, This is life. Yeah. So that's very, very important work you're doing. And I love that you offer such contrasting ways of dealing with your grief. So it doesn't matter where someone is on the spectrum, there's probably something there that will be able to help them, wherever they're at. So, yeah, that's wonderful. How long was it, Dan? Because you were in construction. How long have you moved completely out of construction, or are you still involved in construction and do this as a sideline, or, what does that look like for you?
Well, actually, in this past December, I retired from construction and decided that this is what I want to do for my next chapter. And very fortunate that moving to a new city and has allowed me to reach out in ways, not only for friendships, but for connections, making these podcasts available to get the word out and to begin to help others that are stuck in their grief.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Really important work you're both doing, and I love that. So, yeah, how does that grief around Leah sit with you today? How would you describe it?
It's not as constant as it was in the early days. It's still every so often, or it's still, I can be taken back to that time and those feelings in a minute. I now have the resources to be able to move through it. I'm not afraid of those difficult and painful feelings anymore. The biggest thing that has happened that I'm aware of, that I became aware of when a granddaughter was born a year ago, we met her when she was about 3 weeks old, and my heart just completely burst open, and I was able to greet her with a completely open heart.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was still had all those layers of protection in it. So I had no idea I was going to have a granddaughter 20 years down the lines. And so that was a huge surprise. And I was just so grateful that I said that I met my grief when I did, because it just, she just fills my life with joy. And I feel Leah around when we're with her. I've gotten messages from Leah that she's glad that we're all in the same city now, so she doesn't have to go as us. Yeah, so I never could have imagined that that's what I was doing. And I realized that when we're present, that our presence seeds the future. We have no idea what that means. I had no idea what that means. But I've come to realize that presence seeds the future. Where I'm present, I'm seeding what's happening in the future.
Wonderful. Dan?
We're bittersweet. I find the sweetness in some of the memories, some of the occurrences that are the synchronicities that you spoke of earlier. Hearing that favorite song of hers on the radio, seeing a reflection in our granddaughter's eyes that remind me of Leah when she was small. So there are many moments. And again, all of the things that we weren't able to experience, the graduation from high school, going on to college, the graduation there, those were some of the things that I had bottled up and that were making so much noise. And now with 20 years of hindsight, those moments are less painful. And I still consider what it would be like, who she would have been as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bittersweet.
Yeah. That's a good word to describe it. Yeah, bittersweet, because, that longing never goes away, does it? take them back and prancing through that door, like I mentioned on previous podcasts, my daughter used to just annoy the absolute out of me. She just had that, but she was beautiful with it. And then she'd just give me that great big beautiful smile and go, "We're all good, aren't we, Mum?" Those sorts of things. And I miss that dreadfully. So I really get that. And I understand what you were saying also, Nancy, about heart walls and your heart being wide open to this new child, because, oh my gosh, the work I've done, stripping away my own heart walls has been tremendous. I find myself 4 years on crying more now than I did initially. Just some of the things that you guys have been sharing has caused me just to well up and tear up, and, and that's because I know now my heart's wide open and that I'm ready to give myself and be fully present in who I am. But it's been a ride to get here, but one I've truly welcomed and I'm grateful for every day. So you also talk about people keeping, unresolved grief, that it keeps them stuck and tired and depleted, even if they're trying their hardest to face it and work through it. So if somebody is listening today and they're in that exact spot where they're trying their hardest to cope with it and deal with it, but they're stuck, they're tired, they're depleted, what are your recommendations?
I think you said it best the other day when you said, find your resource. There is a resource out there for everyone. It might not be the same one that we did, that you did. There is a resource for everyone, because everyone meets grief in their own way. And if the first thing doesn't work, try something else. It doesn't mean that you failed. It means that that's not the right path. And ask for help. Ask to be shown what where you're being called.
Yeah, for me too, because I'm a bit of an individual, a very independent, a bit of a soloist, even with my daughter all those years, tough everything out, just get on with it. And I know there are a lot of people out there like myself. So also too, for me, it was really important to wrap people around me and to allow myself to be safe. And it was only a few people, let me tell you. There weren't too many people that were coming in. But there were a few select people that I knew I could be and feel really safe with, and that they would not judge anything that came out of my mouth.
Yeah, safety is really important. Creating a safe space to feel these feelings, because a lot of these feelings are things that we've never let out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what do you each consider the highlights of what you've done in your daughter's memory?
In her memory, being able to live my life to the fullest is the highlight of honors her in a way that feels most meaningful to me. And not staying stuck. Yeah.
Doing this work and bringing it to people who are stuck and who need to hear the message that you can give yourself permission, and the work that you do. And going back to what Nancy was saying before, whatever it is that you find as your resource, and whatever work that you do, the work is worth it. You'll end up in a better place than being in that bottomless pit of grief that can swallow you. Doing the work is worth it.
And it doesn't mean that you're going to forget your loved one. It's so many people wonder about that. You cannot forget someone who you've had strong love connection with. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. So is this something that you both see yourselves doing as your life's work? Are you going to just carry on or do you see yourself moving on to something different, or are you just committed to this?
This feels like my calling. Yeah, from now until I can no longer do it.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought too. That's what I thought.
Yeah, and again, my focus is trying to help men be open to the possibility. And whatever it is, not everyone is going to suffer the loss of a child. And at some point, you're going to be at a point where you're going to need to do something for yourself. And the things that we can bring can help lay the groundwork and put a few tools in your toolkit so that when it happens, there's a path forward, that you know that there is some hope and some joy again.
Yeah, I love that. And I like what you said earlier, Dan, about it doesn't matter what the catalyst for the grief is, whether it's your job or a loss of a partnership or whatever it is, the death of your child or, a partner. Really, grief is grief, and it exhibits, which, in the same way people feel it. And when they're in that really dark depth of despair, that's when you need to be facing something. So I'm really, really glad that you both, at the coalface doing this for people, So thank you. So we could just continue chatting because, I just love the information that you're sharing with us today. But now I want to know what the best thing that has happened to you either today or this week is.
Best thing that's happened to me today. Well, this is a great thing, talking to you. Thank you. So this is a great thing. Well, the best thing that's happening this weekend is tomorrow is our granddaughter Aria's first birthday.
Oh,
She'll be born. Yeah. Not bad.
no. Good day. Oh,
I can share that with me.
Nancy made chocolate chip cookies, and I made homemade chocolate ice cream for dessert tonight.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's worth enjoying. What is your go-to when your day is, we've got an expression here in New Zealand, turning to custard, when it all goes a little bit left field. What is your go-to when you have a day like that?
Dance break. Dance break is a good one. A lot of it like dancing. Sometimes just getting outside can help me to reconnect to myself, or meditating, sitting in samyama, writing, all of those things help.
Great. Dan?
Out. That's it.
Oh.
So I pick up the guitar and I'll strum a few things, and I have an array of musical instruments that just keep me entertained, and I'm finding they are a great source of entertainment for a 1-year-old.
Wonderful. I love that. And let's finish up with you sharing your 3 takeaways with us that you'd like to leave our listeners with.
It is possible to find meaning, purpose, and joy again after a devastating loss.
There is no need to suffer, because suffering doesn't serve you. It may feel like that's where you're at, but there is so much more to life than being stuck in the suffering.
Honor your own process. Mm-hmm. No right or wrong way.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's what I'm understanding more and more as I share, this platform with different people sharing their stories, is that grief has so many different looks to it, and so many different responses, and so many different reactions, and what people actually get from it. So I want to thank you both. I want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart for sharing, a really heartfelt conversation with me today. I felt that. I felt you both coming through from a really heart-centered place, and you're both full of grace and vulnerability, because what you've shared with us is the sort of stuff that people want to be hearing, that you don't go from just losing somebody to being this really together with that person. That things are a real journey and a real process, and it's finding how that looks for you each. So thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to share it with others. Hit the subscribe or like button so you can be notified of each weekly episode. Also, let me know how I'm doing, especially if there's more you'd like to know that perhaps we didn't get time to touch on today or in past episodes. And if you're after resources to help you out on this journey, or more about the energy healing work I do, hit the Healing to Be You link. That's the word healing, 2, letter B, letter U.com. So until next time, be kind to you, and thank you for joining us on the beautiful side of grief.